working as a fire lookout wasn't something I dreamed about as a kid. But after a rough year, family drama, a breakup, and a general sense that the world was way too loud, I wanted out, just for a while. A friend from my old job had worked a lookout post the summer before and swore it was the most peaceful gig you could imagine. So when the listing popped up for a remote fire tower deep in the Bitterroot Range, I applied immediately. I didn't even care about the pay. I just wanted quiet. They flew me in by chopper and dropped me at Tower 9, a small, weathered structure perched on a rocky ridge that overlooked nothing but rolling pine forests and winding creeks. There were no nearby towns, no roads, no cell service, just a narrow trail and a radio with 2 channels, one for the Rangers, one for emergencies. The next closest active tower, Tower 6, was over a dozen miles away. I could see it through binoculars on clear days, but only barely. There was one other tower in visual range, though. Tower 4, southeast of mine, maybe 6 miles away. A little crooked, half collapsed, and completely blackened by fire. The Rangers told me it had been destroyed by a lightning strike over a decade ago. No one went near it anymore. They called it Ghost Post, mostly as a joke. Mostly. My first week was everything I wanted. Long days of reading, journaling, sketching the horizon line in a notebook, sipping bad coffee, and watching the clouds roll by. I'd log the weather, scan for smoke, and occasionally call in status reports. The radio rarely lit up. The silence, the stillness. It was perfect. I started sleeping better than I had in years. Then, about a week in, something changed. It was around 3 a.m. when I saw the first light. I'd stayed up late reading and had just set my book down when a strange glow caught my eye, deep in the trees to the west, far beyond where the old trails ended. It wasn't fire, not orange or flickering. It was a pale bluish-white light, glowing steadily like a bulb on a dimmer switch. Soft, but definitely real. I pressed my face to the window and watched it pulse. Once every 2 seconds. 1, 2, flash. 1, 2, flash. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, then vanished. I thought maybe it was a poacher with a lantern or some kind of equipment flare. I logged it just in case and went to bed. The next night, I saw it again. Exactly at 3:17 a.m. Same glow, same location, same rhythm. This time, I radioed it in. Tower 9 to base. Possible unauthorized campfire or beacon activity. Quadrant 3, C. Visual confirmation only. Will continue to observe. There was a long pause before base responded. Copy. Tower 9. Just to confirm, you're reporting a visual near the Tower 4 area. Affirmative. Light source appears to be originating near Ghost Post. Silence again. Then, finally, we don't have anyone out there. Tower 4's zone has been inactive for years, probably just a reflection or thermal pocket. Log it and move on. I press the mic again. Base. It's not a reflection. This is the second night I've seen it. Same time, same place. Their response was calm. Flat. Tower 9. We don't talk about Tower 4. Log it. Don't engage. Over. That was it. I didn't sleep that night. The next few nights, I set alarms. 3:16 a.m. every time. And without fail, the light would appear. Always in the same direction. Always pulsing. Sometimes it looked closer. I started taking notes, drawing crude maps, estimating distances. I tried to convince myself it was something explainable. Underground gas flares, electromagnetic weirdness, maybe some unlisted equipment tower. I wanted to believe that. But then came the night it changed. Instead of pulsing at its usual rhythm, the light began to flicker irregularly. Faster, erratic, It flashed 3 times quickly, paused, then again, almost like a pattern, like it was signaling. I stared at it for nearly an hour. It didn't stop. I felt like if I looked away, I'd miss something important. The next morning, I made a reckless decision. I packed a bag, water, compass, first aid kit, bear spray, and started hiking toward the source. I didn't radio anyone. I just left a note in the log that I was conducting a visual sweep. The forest was denser than I expected. Even with GPS, I lost the path 3 times. But I kept going, always steering toward where the light had appeared. Just after dusk, I found a clearing. Nothing special, just a patch of earth surrounded by thick timber and mossy rocks. But something about it felt wrong. The silence here wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. And then I saw it. A soft blue glow rising in the center of the clearing, hovering 4 feet off the ground. No heat, no source, no explanation. It pulsed once, then again, and then it vanished. I stood there frozen, waiting for it to come back. And that's when I heard it. A voice. Barely a whisper, right behind me. You weren't supposed to follow. I spun around, flashlight up, nothing. I ran, didn't stop until I reached the tower. I radioed base, told them I got lost on a sweep and made it back safe. I didn't mention the light or the voice. The next night at 3:17 a.m., the light came back, closer. I filed for transfer the next day. They didn't ask why. I don't think they needed to. Sometimes, late at night, I still wake up at 3:17 on the dot, and I swear I can see something glowing behind the trees outside my window. I was assigned to Tower 4 in late June, just after the start of wildfire season. It was my 3rd summer working with the Forest Service, but the first time they'd put me on a solo post. I was nervous, sure, but also excited. A little cabin on stilts, 360-degree views, and nobody around for miles. What more could someone like me want? I wasn't afraid of isolation. In fact, I welcomed it. Tower 4 sat on a ridge that overlooked a thick stretch of pine forest, about 2 hours from the nearest ranger station. No roads led to it anymore, just a faded trail barely visible through the undergrowth. They flew me in by helicopter with my gear and 2 weeks' worth of supplies. The tower was solid, if a bit creaky. Single-room cabin, a propane stove, a shortwave radio, and a rusted water tank out back that only worked if you kicked it hard enough. The first few nights were uneventful. I read a lot, cooked basic meals, watched storms move across the horizon like slow bruises. I'd check in with base twice a day, log weather patterns, and scan for smoke. I didn't see another soul, and I was fine with that. But 5 days in, around midnight, the radio crackled. It wasn't base, not a ranger. The signal was faint, panicked. Mayday. Mayday. Can anyone hear me? I sat up in my cot, wide awake. I leaned into the mic. This is Tower 4. Repeat your transmission. Are you in distress? I crashed. Plane crash. I don't know where I am. Please, anyone. I froze. I'd never dealt with anything like that before. Can you identify your location? I asked. Any landmarks? GPS signal? Static. Then, no signal. Trees everywhere. Mountains. I'm hurt. Think my leg's broken. His name was Brandon. He said he'd been flying a small single-engine plane solo, taking scenic shots for a magazine article. Something failed mid-flight, and he'd gone down hard. He didn't know exactly where, but he thought it was somewhere west of a tall ridge. I radioed base immediately, told them everything. They responded 10 minutes later. Tower 4, we've received no distress signals, no active flights matching that description. There are no known crashes within 100 miles of your location. I repeated Brandon's message, urged them to send someone out. They told me to log it and monitor for further transmissions. That didn't sit right with me. The next night, the signal came again. Brandon sounded worse, more tired, more hoarse. Food's low, water's worse. I've got wildlife sniffing around. I don't want to die out here. I stayed up the whole night talking to him. He told me about his sister, how he regretted never reconciling after their last fight. He asked me what I did when I wasn't in the tower. I told him about school, my favorite bands, how I used to be scared of the dark when I was a kid. He laughed at that. He said, "Same here. Still am, actually." We built a strange friendship, night by night. He'd check in right around 11:45, and we'd talk until my voice gave out. I started bringing coffee to the radio desk. I mapped out every possible flight path he could have taken. I spent hours each day with binoculars and charts, trying to figure out where he might be. I begged base to send a chopper to sweep the area. They wouldn't. Said there were no reports to follow, no coordinates, no crash. I started to wonder if I was going crazy, if the isolation had gotten to me. But every time Brandon came on the radio, I knew I wasn't imagining it. He remembered everything. He asked about my day. He'd hum the songs I told him I liked. He even started calling me Tower, like it was my nickname. A week passed, then 2. I was obsessed. And then came the night it all changed. I was dozing in my chair when the radio buzzed, but Brandon didn't greet me with a joke or a tired sigh. He was whispering, "Tower, you there?" "Yeah, I'm here," I said, rubbing my eyes. "What's wrong?" "There's something outside." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "I thought it was a bear, but it's not moving like one." The signal crackled. He was breathing fast. It's circling the fuselage. I can hear it sniffing. It knows I'm here. I sat up straighter. "Get something to defend yourself. Flare, flashlight, anything." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's not a bear. Oh God, it's not a bear." A horrible, wet-sounding scream tore through the speaker. And then, dead silence. I grabbed the mic, panicking. Brandon, are you there?" No answer. Static. I felt something crack in me. I'd spent weeks worrying, hoping, connecting with this guy. I gripped the mic until my knuckles turned white. "Please," I said, "just say something." That's when the laughter came. Low, cruel, not Brandon's. A voice came back on the line, calm, smug. "Wow, you really bought it, didn't you?" I blinked, stunned. "What?" "The plane crash, the broken leg, the bear. You fell for every bit of it." I didn't say anything. I just sat there in stunned silence. It was fun talking, Tower. Really. You've got a good voice. Calming, easy to trust. I could barely speak. "Why would you do that?" "Because people like you are lonely. You'll believe anything when you're desperate to connect." Then the final blow came. "Anyway, thanks for the company. Oh, and by the way, nice view from Tower 4. We'll be seeing you." The radio went dead. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I packed my gear before the sun came up and left everything behind. Hiked the 5 miles back to the ranger station. Never looked back. I don't know who that voice belonged to. I don't know where he was broadcasting from, but he knew things about me, details I never said out loud. He knew I was alone, and he knew where to find me. I was 19, the summer I took the Tower 12 job. I'd just wrapped up my sophomore year of college and didn't want to go back home. I needed a break from the noise, the questions about my major, the constant pressure to have my whole life figured out. I figured a summer job as a fire lookout would be the perfect escape. Just me, a logbook, some hiking trails, and quiet. I'd done some outdoor work before, trail maintenance, weekend ranger assistant stuff, so I wasn't totally green. When I saw a listing for seasonal positions through the State Forest Service, I applied right away. A few calls later, I got assigned to Tower 12. No one told me much about the post, other than that it hadn't been used in a while and was due for a refresh. The ranger who drove me out there was this older guy named Price. Friendly, the type who spoke in grunts and hand gestures more than full sentences. We didn't talk much on the drive, just the sound of tires crunching gravel and birds fluttering past the windshield. When we reached the base of the ridge, we got out and hiked the last half mile together, hauling gear. That's when Price finally said something that stuck. "Place hasn't had a long-term lookout in a bit," he muttered as we climbed the last few steps. "Last guy didn't finish the season." I glanced back at him. "Why not?" He shrugged. "Just left one day. Didn't tell anyone. Tower was still locked up tight. Gear was inside. Just no lookout. People leave. Happens more than you'd think." I didn't press. I probably should have. Tower 12 sat on a rocky spine overlooking a dense sea of pine. The structure itself wasn't bad. Wooden supports, a metal roof, a small deck that wrapped around the upper level. Inside was a twin cot, a propane stove, a battered radio, and 2 large drawers packed with maps, weather charts, and logbooks. It smelled like cedar and dust. Price helped me settle in, gave me the usual checklist: scan every hour, keep your logs current, radio in daily updates. Then he shook my hand and hiked back down the ridge. By the time I heard his truck rumble away in the distance, I was completely alone. And honestly, it was peaceful. The first few days were easy. I read a lot, walked short trails around the tower, watched distant storms roll across the horizon. The quiet didn't bother me. In fact, it felt like a detox. No emails, no deadlines, no expectations. It wasn't until I started digging through the logbooks that things began to feel off. Every fire tower has logs. You're supposed to write down anything worth noting: wind speeds, visibility, lightning strikes, potential fire risks, wildlife activity. Most of the older entries were basic and neat. Cloud cover, 40%. Light winds, possible storm developing south, stuff like that. But about a third of the way into the most recent logbook, the handwriting changed. The name at the top was Cooper. His early entries were normal, maybe a little wordy, but nothing unusual. But after a few weeks, the tone shifted. Saw movement at the base of the ridge last night. Thought it was a deer, but it didn't move like one. Heard tapping on the stairs around 2 a.m. No sign of animal tracks. It's not an animal. It's watching the tower. My stomach turned. The entries got more frantic. One read, "Don't look too long. Don't acknowledge him." Another, "He comes closer when I talk about him." Then the entries stopped. A few pages had been torn out, ripped clean from the spine. The remaining pages were blank. I closed the logbook and tried to laugh it off. Maybe Cooper was unstable. Isolation does things to people, right? I told myself I'd stay grounded, be smart, stick to the protocols. That night, I couldn't sleep. At around 2:30 a.m., I woke up cold. The propane stove had shut off, and the night air had crept in. I got up to relight it, and as I glanced out the window, I froze. There was a figure in the clearing below, standing perfectly still at the edge of the tree line, not moving, not swaying, just watching. I backed away from the window. I waited in the darkness for nearly an hour, staring out, heart pounding. But the figure never came closer, and when I looked again, he was gone. The next morning, I hiked down to the clearing. There were no footprints, no broken branches, just undisturbed grass and soft earth. But I noticed something else. The metal ladder leading up to the tower, there were scuff marks halfway up, like someone had started climbing. I didn't radio it in. I didn't know what I'd even say. Hey, someone might be stalking my tower. I knew how that would sound. I didn't want to be the guy who cracked 2 weeks into the job. That night, I locked the hatch and pushed a chair against it. Childish, but it made me feel better. At exactly 2:34 a.m., I heard creaking on the stairs. Not wind, not an animal, footsteps. I sat perfectly still, flashlight in hand, not daring to breathe. The footsteps stopped just below the hatch, and then silence. I waited until sunrise to open it. No one was there. The next day, I found a torn scrap of notebook paper tucked behind the map drawer. The handwriting matched Cooper's. It read, "Don't write about him. Don't speak about him. He only needs to hear you once." I left that evening. Didn't file a report. Didn't wait for Price. I hiked down the mountain and hitched a ride into the next town. They never asked why I left. Maybe they didn't want to know. But I've thought about Cooper, about what he saw, and about that last thing he wrote in the log. He's at the base of the tower. Don't come down. I never did, and I never will. Thanks for stopping by the channel. We hope you enjoyed these 3 truly terrifying stories. If you want to hear more just like this one, subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on so you can be reminded when we post a new long-form video every Tuesday at 10 a.m. If you have a story you'd like to hear read on the channel, email it to us at officialnightmarenarratives@gmail.com, and you might just hear your story read in a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and stay spooky, friends. We'll catch you in the next one.